So we were just thinking of sharing a little bit about the current place where we find ourselves now in the retrograde of Venus. We came with a video before and we were talking in the beginning, and now as Venus is approaching, she's at 8 degrees Gemini now. She's going to be finishing the retrograde and stationary just around the time of the solstice eclipse. We're at a critical point now where Mars is making that conjunction to Neptune, and all the themes that come with Mars conjoining Neptune, making this square to the place where Venus was when the retrograde began. But in this case, Venus isn't there right now, the Sun is there. And I don't know if there's thoughts you want to start with.
Well, whenever you look at Mars, we're always looking at that which pertains to action, movements. Like Mars is like the leading edge. So wherever Mars is transiting is where there's something new, something happening. There's like the next moment, the next experience. It's sort of like trailblazing our soul journey. And that happens through the vehicle of conscious choice. Mars translates like the deeper unconscious impulses that bring us into this life, into conscious choices, things that we can tangibly work with. So whenever you put any planet in Pisces, we're dealing with truth. Like truth with a capital T. Like that which is eternal, that which is whole. And yet you have this Mars-Neptune squaring the Gemini-Sagittarius axis. Sagittarius corresponds to race. Gemini is knowledge, information, resources. So Mars in Pisces can especially with Neptune, can easily be the dynamic of oppression, right? The Mars energy being held back. So if you have Mars in Pisces in your natal chart, for example, you could have two very strong extremes. One can be a person that has like this delusional sense of like, I'm a superhero ninja. I'm going to do anything because I'm invincible. So it's basically associating the personal will with God, Mars, Pisces. Or you can have a situation where the personal will is sort of lost in this collective energy, and this individual can't assert themselves, and they can actually have this very strong experience of constantly being belittled. So like that Mars energy can actually feel really small. So collectively, one thing that we see here, and I feel this is strongly signified by the movement of Mars with Neptune, in particular because they're squaring the nodes, is there's a lot of anger and there's a lot of growing awareness of systematic racial oppression, persecution, hatred, and fear. And the fact that so many white people right now are feeling, and this includes myself, this sense of, I really feel this sense of responsibility and this calling to educate myself, to learn the history of racism, to sort of open my mind and my horizons to become Sagittarius, more aware of people of a different culture, of a different life experience than my own. And so that Mars moving, dissolving into Neptune in Pisces, you know, and it's been in this, for the past 2 weeks, it's pretty much been in a conjunction to this Neptune. So it's meaningful to think about that, and squaring Venus as well. Is on one level of perspective, it's one level of healing in terms of the truth, right? Like Jesus says, those who are last will be first, and those who are first will be last. And so those who have been persecuted, those who have been lower and diminished, now there is some sense of healing. We still have a long way to go, but there's a sense of, okay, they're being heard now. There's more respect and acknowledgement and empowerment there. And it's also, Mars and Pisces can really express almost like, you know, this energy of a person being very small and bullied and taken advantage of and unappreciated. And then suddenly it's like, I'm powerful. Bullshit. I am powerful. And in Pisces, we have this journey almost of, it can either be like, if we're spiritualizing things and we don't want to like be violent, we don't want to hurt, we don't want to get angry, there can be this turning point within consciousness in Pisces where we realize, oh, anger is a part of it too, right? Being strong and being powerful and actually expressing myself, using my energy, using my aggression, right? There's purpose for it, there's direction for it. So I just see like a lot of healing, a a lot of energy opening up, and it'll be interesting to see what continues to unfold in the collective awareness as Mars moves beyond Neptune and comes into an exact square to the nodes, which will coincide with Venus moving direct as well. So it really feels like there's a whole lot of energy building right now, and we have some still pretty interesting turning points to come in the next few weeks.
One of the things I'm noticing in that, like when you're talking about the square to the nodes with racial injustice and the uprising of people around injustice, that now more and more information has become compiled and accessible. Like there's a post that I've come across a couple of times with basically a resource library for white folks to educate themselves on racism, to do the work, to begin doing the work. There are groups being called together that are offering, education and support. So like this collection of information, but at this point, Mercury is in Cancer and will be stationing retrograde on the 17th. And so we're going to be moving into a period where as Venus goes direct, Mercury goes retrograde, goes back through the waters of Cancer. And I think of this journey of like the integration of the emotional piece, the integration of information. It's like, it's one thing to have, an uprising and a movement, but the sustained digestion of the work that's needing to be done, of what's happening, like in the collective consciousness, like this shift of Mercury turning retrograde, I think will be an important journey that will then coincide with Venus crossing. Like they're going to basically cross paths in a way. And in between that time, we'll have, the last series of Cancer Capricorn eclipses. We're going to have the new moon eclipse on the solstice, which hasn't happened in 48 years. And then we're going to have the next and the final Cancer Capricorn eclipse for this cycle. Won't happen again for like another 19 years, basically, on July 4th. So there's like a powerful collective turning point and shift that's happening at this time, and I'm just tracking that particular transit as well.
And let's be clear about something. So we have the South Node in Sagittarius, all this Pisces stuff squaring it. It's only going to intensify over the next few months, really. I hope this wind isn't deeming this whole video useless, but we'll find out. The ruler of the South Node is Jupiter. It's retrograde, and it's moving back to come into exact conjunction with Pluto in Capricorn. Jupiter, Pluto, both retrograde in Capricorn, is the dismantling of systemic racism. 100%. So anything that is structured, that is systematized, is Capricorn. Pluto are forces of oppression and also the will of evolution. Things have to change on Earth. And Jupiter is the truth. It's like not truth with a capital T. Jupiter is race. Jupiter is culture. Jupiter is your story. It's your truth. It's your experience, right? And Jupiter in Capricorn can be a prevailing cultural mythos, a cultural construct of, this is how you live, and this is how I look at black people, this is how I look at you, and like women are this, men are this, all these constructs that are just sort of built in. Maybe it's not the story you're consciously speaking because these aren't like laws or rules anymore, right? Like slavery doesn't exist legally, but it's structured, it's conditioned in the consciousness, these cultural and racial and gender constructs. So Jupiter is telling the truth. It's also, Jupiter is a magnifying glass. So you can think of Jupiter as a magnifying glass over Pluto, gaining this larger perspective of the abuse, of the oppression, of the evil. So it's a pretty revealing time, actually. Do you know when Jupiter crosses over Pluto? Like in the next couple weeks, I think.
Yeah. All of this is pretty much coming to a head all at the same, moment historically. And even now we're like where the energies are moving. Once Mars makes the conjunction to Neptune, he's going to be moving towards his time in Aries, which is basically the latter half of the year, the next part of the year. And
plus he'll be retrograde for a lot of it.
Exactly. It's like all this buildup, but Mars in Pisces is so different than Mars in Aries. And you know, that will, I think, just put a fire under
That's the
us.
whole thing to talk more about, because like that whole Mars and Aries retrograde squaring all the Capricorn, it's going to be interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, we're sending lots of love to you on your journey now.
Mhm.